How would you describe what you do in a couple of sentences?
Yeah, well, CBM is an international development charity that's focused particularly on people with disabilities. As you can imagine, in countries with no social services, people with disabilities are the ones that get most left behind. One of the former UN Secretary General said whenever he went to a village, he'd ask, take me to the poorest family here, and it was almost always someone with a disability. So we're really focused on that sharp end.
And you've just come back from Bangladesh. Tell us about this situation, because this is with and I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly, but the Rohingya,
That'll do.
people refugee crisis. I remember a number of years ago, because my former neighbour where I used to live was from Myanmar. And so I heard about this, it was in the news a lot. You'd hear that name, that people group a lot. And then it's kind of gone out of the main news you hear around the place, with other things becoming more prominent. But what's the situation with these people and what we're seeing over there?
Yeah, well, with so many conflicts now, we're not hearing as much, but it's ongoing. So basically, 2017, the Myanmar government pretty much violently expelled these people, was attacking them. They went over the border to Bangladesh at a place called Cox's Bazar. And there was 700,000 of them at the time, and it's now grown to over 1 million. And so basically it was like, well, what do you do with suddenly, an extra 700,000 people? And they created these camps, refugee camps that the UN is facilitating, but a lot of agencies, hundreds of agencies are there working with these people. So basically, they were in a forest. They cut down all the trees. They set up temporary shelters for every family, and they've been living in that tiny little area for that
years
long
and
time.
years.
Yeah, it's the biggest formal refugee camp in the world.
Unbelievable, the scale of that. You think of 1 million people. I mean, that's 70% of the size of Auckland City, just moving into an area with nothing there for them and having to set up all this temporary, which turns out to be much more than temporary, lodgings and everything. That's difficult.
Yeah, totally. And in the size of much less than actually even the central part of Auckland. Yeah, so there's a lot of tension because of course the people outside they have to effectively put up with not having their land. So it's interesting. A lot of the work, something I learned is that some of the work is with those host communities as well as the people in the refugee camps as well, because otherwise, you could get some pretty bad violence, right? You could get real dissatisfaction of all these people coming in, taking the land. So there's a work to make sure that those people, the development of those people, has taken place as well.
Are you working in partnership with other aid organizations? Because what would you say would be CBM's approach, and why does it differ from other aid organizations who identify the vulnerable and at risk?
Yeah, well, we work with a lot of great organizations, but our specific focus is on disability. And so we have a partner there, the Centre for Disability and Development. And so we fund them, but also some other agencies as well will fund them as well. But CBM has, we really founded them a long, long time ago, and we've built them up, and they are basically in the camps doing a needs assessment of people with disabilities in particular. Yeah, so that's their real focus is, who has, and this is really tragic, who might have lost their legs crossing over because they stepped on a mine, or who, and I'll talk about a little kid with this later on. She had cerebral palsy and was carried over as a 3-year-old. But then, of course, what's there for her? Normally there'd be treatment, but there was no treatment initially. So that's what CBM is making sure, that those people aren't being left behind.
Well, stick around, Murray, because I'd love to hear some of the personal stories of what you've seen and the people that you met while you're over there. Just got back from a trip to Bangladesh where you're seeing the Rohingya refugee crisis, the largest refugee camp in the world, over 1 million people.
Incomprehensible, that.
Yeah.
That's staggering.
The great news is, you were mentioning to us just off air, Murray, if people donate to support you on this, which you can do, by the way, cbmnz.org.nz, you can sponsor a child, you can donate through there. there's a government match alongside every gift?
Yeah, that's right. So this is one of the programs that the New Zealand government supports the aid agencies to do. So they'll supply a certain amount, and we basically top that up. And because that's a requirement, basically every dollar that someone from New Zealand gives to CBM effectively has 4 times as much impact, because that will be the total value from CBM, and MFAT will be 4 times as much. So yeah, it's a really good opportunity to have your money go a lot further than it would otherwise. But yeah, in particular, these people, people who are refugees and in these camps and also have a disability. I can hardly think of anyone in greater need. Yeah, so I can tell you a story of one girl who's actually featured on our website. If you want to go to cbmnz.org.nz and have a look at this. But she is an 11-year-old girl. She was carried across the border when she was 3, and she has cerebral palsy. And because of that cerebral palsy, and because not being able to get treatment, her limbs are really strongly locked up in a way that they wouldn't have been otherwise. And so she couldn't speak. So one of the things we've been doing is providing speech therapy. So, you consider how easily and fluently you guys speak. It's because of all the muscles we have in our faces, but they couldn't really work together in the way that it does for us. So, for a long time she couldn't speak. But when I went there, she's now able. I could hear her say "mama" and "dada." Wow! And she's learning to speak and get the confidence with other people. But she can talk to her parents. But also, physiotherapists have been able to unlock her little limbs also. So now she can stand and she can walk with supported. And eventually, they're really hoping that she is going to be able to walk unsupported, which is incredible for someone who would otherwise just be locked up in a tiny little, the size of anyone's kitchen or less, basically little shack.
What a wonderful story. Hopefully that comes to pass and she's able to walk. I guess you mentioned it, being in a refugee camp is one thing, and then you've got disabilities on top of that. So you're ostracized, maybe even alienated from the rest of the community. But that story you just shared with us, can you talk about the impact that has not only on the immediate family, but the wider community when you hear stories of growth and improvement?
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of people there are, they're refugees, but they're not just sitting around. They're actually doing work in construction because of course they have to continually construct these houses. And so her parents, like her dad, really wouldn't have been able to work because he's just looking after her.
Yeah,
so
right.
He'll be able to contribute that way. So it does have an ongoing impact on the community as well. So there's lots and lots of ways I saw that was happening. There was kids who are now have been referred for cochlear implants in their ears, for example, because they weren't hearing, and now they'll be able to go to school. So again, having a great impact on their community eventually.
Amazing the work that you do. Christian Blind Mission, you immediately think of like the cataracts operations and things like this that we've talked about in the past, but caring for all people with disabilities in different forms, the need must just be so great. And I know with, issues like this, like we talked about when this all started 7-8 years ago, it was in the news a lot. It had a lot of attention, a lot of spotlight on it, and immediately in a crisis, the news and everything follows it. But then over time, other things come up, spotlight kind of moves, and then eventually resources almost start to dry up for places like this, even though there hasn't been a huge amount of progress or the need has only grown. But there's really some coming deadlines where funding is drying up and organisations are pulling out. It's a bit of a crisis. Yeah,
that's right. So a lot of people have heard of how both the US and the UK governments are cutting back on aid, and so there's a funding hole. And so, we're appealing for people to help fill that hole, especially for people with disabilities. But for the camps in general, there's likely to be food crisis before the end of the year, and also fuel for cooking, which will basically mean they'll be in conflict with their host communities because they'll start to want to chop down trees to cook. Yeah. So basically, every dollar counts at the moment. It's actually reached crisis point, even though, as you say, it's not in the news as much as it used to be.
All right, Murray. Rattle off that website again. How can everyday Kiwis get involved to really make a difference?
Sure. So cbmnz.org.nz. You can find out more, but you can also donate there, and it's 0800 772264 if you want to ring my friendly team.
What's that number again? 0800?
0800 772264. I always have to get that right.
Important to get it
Good,
right. Yeah, and Google CBM Christian Blind Mission. You'll find all the details there and as to how you can donate. And remember, government coming to the party as well, 4 timesing basically the donations. It goes that much further. So a wonderful thing to get behind. And the people that are there, man, the need is it's hard to describe the scale of it. So if you can support in any way, you know it's going to a good place. Murray, nice to see you again, my friend. Welcome anytime.
Take care, Murray. God bless.
Cheers, guys.